What is up, everybody? Good evening. Tonight we have a later night version of the early team live stream. I'm Hunter Vaness. We are presented by Fantasy Points here tonight. Be sure to use the code Vaness22. That's two N's and two S's when you're when you're signing up for a subscription on Fantasy Points. Happy Memorial Day to everybody out there. Hope you all had a great long weekend this weekend. Be sure to thank a troop if you haven't done so already tonight. That is certainly the reason for the day today. Of course, thanks for tuning in. I think this is our 9th or 10th early tea time live stream. I think I have that right. But whether it's your first time watching or it's you've been here every single time, I really do appreciate everybody tuning in each week. Just the support that I get, week in and week out, whether it's just a simple like on Twitter or whether you're DMing me, sending a tweet out just about the show or anything in general. That's really why I do this. It makes this a lot more fun. So I appreciate everybody taking their time to, tune in here tonight, or whether it's a replay too. So appreciate you all. Talking about, Colonial a little bit last week and the Charles Schwab, second week in a row, we witnessed a golfer come from 7 back on the final day to win the golf tournament. Not a backdoor top 10 or a backdoor top 5 that we see quite often, from Xander or Rory at those top events, right? But, these guys have gone out and won the whole freaking thing on that final day. Justin Thomas winning last week at the PGA Championship. I think that one was a little bit more, not as surprising, I guess we can say. I think all of us kind of expected Mito to maybe not play his best golf, when he's holding that 54-hole lead in a major for the first time. But this week, Scotty Scheffler was playing lights out, at least in the first 2 rounds. He did look a little shaky in round 3, I thought, when I was watching him. But, man, he just did not have it on Sunday, and Sam Burns certainly did. And he just looked so confident in that playoff, even though he had a couple of hours off before, teeing it up once again on that 18th hole. So shout out to Sam Burns. Shout out to anybody that had him yesterday. I can't imagine there are that many Scheffler tickets out there, but I know there were definitely some Burns tickets on Twitter. So I can only imagine, what kind of ride that was yesterday, especially in those last, the back 9, I guess, once the leaders were getting there. So congrats to all of you that had Burns there. Let's go ahead and move on to this week. Tonight, going to be a little bit of a shorter one since we are on Memorial Day weekend. I just want to kind of get to more of the important stuff, I guess, tonight. We're still going to do our course preview. We'll look at some of the pivotal holes that I think will really be important this week. We'll do a brief tournament history. We'll do a quick stat breakdown. We'll view the top of the board, of course, and then we'll find some low-owned GPP darts for the week as far as DFS goes. So that's the plan for tonight. If you have any questions, you can throw them in the YouTube chat. Of course, I'd love to answer any questions that you might have. And we will start talking about one of my favorite non-major PGA Tour events, the Memorial. I don't really know why it's my favorite, I guess. I know, you'll hear a lot of Augusta vibes to this course this week at Muirfield Village, but I just think I like it a lot because Tiger's done well here. I think he has 5 wins, at Muirfield. It's just that Jack Nicklaus course. It always has a really solid field, I think, too, again, for a non-major event. So I think maybe that's why I like it quite a bit. But it's not one of those major birdie fest, but it's also not extremely difficult to where, guys are getting extremely frustrated throughout the week. So I like it quite a bit. I think it's a really great golf course. It definitely ranks really high, out of all PGA Tour courses that we see, in my opinion, at least. So we're going to go to Muirfield Village Golf Club. It is a Jack Nicklaus designed course. It's located in Dublin, Ohio, which is near Columbus, Ohio, not far from where Jack grew up, actually. The course is named after Muirfield in Scotland, which is where Jack won his first British Open Championship in 1966. One of the main differences, of course, between this course and the course that he won at in Scotland is that this course is in a major housing development area. You're going to see a lot of really nice houses, especially when they do the flyover or, when they take drone shots, I guess, of the course this week. Whereas, Muirfield in Scotland is in really wide open area. You can actually see a lot of open land when they do the aerial view of that one. So a little bit different, as far as that goes, but that's where the name came from. That's where, I don't know if he got much of the inspiration from it, but at least he, gave the name from his first Open championship. The course was opened in 1974. It's really considered Jack Nicklaus's baby, in my opinion. He's continued to edit, or I guess, have renovations to this course, even minor ones throughout the year. The main one, of course, was in 2020. The 2020 renovation, 4 of the holes were lengthened, 14 greens were changed. Each green got a new bent grass surface. You could actually see them ripping up the greens after 2020 when John Rahm was victorious then. You'll hear that quite a bit this week, I'm sure. Hole 15 was changed quite a bit. I think they extended that one, I think 37 yards. That's one of the 4 holes that was lengthened. As far as the overall course goes, it's a par 72 track. It measures over 7,500 yards long, so it is a little lengthier. You go back to a par 72 for the first time in a couple of weeks. It's a really classical design, in my opinion. Lots of tree-lined fairways that you'll see. Really beautiful sand bunkers surrounding the greens. Some of the main defenses, of course, are going to be those sand bunkers. They're strategically placed around the greens, of course, but they're also strategically placed, in the middle of the fairway, right where PGA Tour players are probably going to be hitting drivers. So we'll see, how that impacts players, of course, this week. But Jack has really done a good job of trying to make this course more difficult throughout the year, and I think he will even, admit that too. Some of the other main defenses here, the rough, in my opinion, is going to be pretty detrimental this week. It's a lengthy 4 inches long. It is a mixture of Kentucky bluegrass and ryegrass, as well as fescue as well. So, if you're hitting the long grass, the rough here, you're really going to have a tough time, in my opinion. The fairways are rather wide, so I don't think, like Colonial last week, we really have to focus on. We do need to focus on accuracy, but it's not going to be as tight as last week. But yeah, that rough is no joke. I don't think we've seen 4-inch rough since. It's been a while. I'll have to pull up my spreadsheet, but we usually hit about 3.5 inches at least at the Wells Fargo, and I think last week at Colonial too. So yeah, 4 inches is no joke. Hey, Carp, how you doing, man? Yeah, Memorial is definitely one of my favorites for sure. Let me know who you're liking this week. Appreciate you watching and joining on YouTube here. There's 13 individual water hazards that come into play on 13 separate holes too. So we'll probably see some penalty shots. We'll probably see some double bogeys throughout the week. They have a creek as well that runs through a lot of the holes, kind of like the PGA Championship, but this one's a little bit wider. The creek at the PGA Championship wasn't huge all week until, the last hole, of course, when Mito knocked it in there. But we'll see how much of an impact it plays this week as well. I think Jack, again, did a really nice job of making it so, it plays as a defense, of course. That's the point of it, right? So the greens are bent grass and will run up to 13 on the stimp meter. So that is pretty fast, especially compared to what we've seen over the last few weeks. Again, they're bent grass, so they're going to be playing firm and fast, in my opinion. It's a difficult golf course. There's no way around that. The cut line over the last 20 years has been anywhere from -1 to +7. I think last year was at +2. So I would assume we see something similar to that this year. But yeah, it is a really difficult golf course. Let's take a look at some of the holes here. I will change around some of my notes just a little bit here and get my other desktop set up. So just looking at, some of the main holes. Again, I really like Memorial. It's just a great test of all aspects of golf, in my opinion. We'll look at the winners here in a little bit, but you really need to have all aspects of your game on point to contend here for sure. So first off, we have hole 1. A lot of, and we're going to use the memorialtournament.com, I believe, is the source for this. A lot of what they have written down here is the changes that they've made since 2020. So obviously you can get a lot of information about the holes, but what I really liked about the site is that they're talking about what was specifically changed. And that's kind of what we need to look at. Course history is important, of course. They did make some changes. I don't think it's a completely different golf course that we have to throw out course history. This isn't the first year it's played since the renovation. So, if we look at last year compared to prior results, there really isn't a whole lot of change. The guys that played well prior to 2020 still played well last year for the most part. So we'll see how that impacts stuff this year. But hole 1 here, again, the opening, they added some length to the opening hole here. When I was doing some prior, research on the course, just about every tee box is elevated. And Jack Nicklaus loves to have these holes start, at the top, and then they just kind of go downhill, throughout the course. So we'll probably see that throughout many of these hole descriptions here, but it starts off on hole one there. This hole is the eighth most difficult hole on the course. Let me get my other notes pulled up here. And I'm using Fantasy National for these stats here now. The average round of par is 0.11 over par. It sees birdies at a 12% rate. This one's pretty difficult compared to some of the other holes on the course here. It's 490 yards. Definitely not, definitely a tough one to start off with, in my opinion. A long par four. So moving on to the second hole. This one is also going to be a par four. It's 459 yards. It is the fifth toughest hole according to the memorialtournament.com. Fantasy National has it ranked as the eighth toughest hole. 14% of the time, players are scoring birdies. Probably another par hole. You'll see a few more double bogeys on this hole, up to about 3%. So yeah, looks like hole two could be pretty difficult as well. It seems like a lot of players will likely use 3-wood or driver off the tee. Kind of mix a mid to short iron into the green, like it says there. So that is the second hole, again, playing as the eighth most difficult hole, again, according to Fantasy National. Third hole is a par four. It's going to measure around 392 yards. I'll double check on that with the Memorial Tournament here. Yeah, 392. So looks like they have these numbers correct this week. So this is going to be the 13th most difficult hole on PGA, or on Fantasy National. This one also sees birdies actually about 20%. So it is one of the more birdieable holes. So yeah, you start those first two holes off with scoring par is probably a good score, and then you definitely want to get a birdie on this third hole. Short par three, 392 yards. Looks like there's a creek that comes into play there. So, yeah, it looks like we do actually see double bogeys on this hole quite a bit, 2%, which is decent for 2.8%, yeah, which is decent for a par four, of course. So, looks to me like a pretty high risk, high reward hole, in my opinion. I would assume a lot of players will lay up right before that creek and hit a wedge into the green there. So, we'll see how that, those first trio of holes shake out. The the fourth hole is going to be a par three, excuse me. It is a par three that measures 210 yards. It's looks like second most difficult par three on the course. No, I'm wrong. All of these par threes are actually very difficult. They all rank inside the top 6 most difficult holes on the course, which we typically see, when comparing it to other courses here. So, again, the fourth hole, it's a par three, 6th most difficult hole on the course. We see birdies about 11% of the time. Looks like we don't have the creek that comes into play here, but there are 4 sand bunkers that, surround the green, like we can see in the picture there. Might be a difficult hole here. These longer par threes, we've been seeing quite a few of them in the last few events. I feel like most courses have at least one that stretches over 210 to 230. But those 250-yard par threes that we saw at Colonial, as well as at Southern Hills, those were just brutal. Par is a great score on those holes. That's a long par three. So again, the fourth hole here, long par three. Looks like the green stretches to the back. When I was doing some reading up on this hole, actually, it said that Jack Nicklaus didn't really like this hole before the renovation. He thought it was one of the worst holes on the course, and now he thinks it's one of the better holes on the course now. So, and it says there in the description too, it went from the smallest green on the course to being the largest green on the course now. So, looks like those bunkers, especially on the left side there, those are deep. Both of those look tough. The ones on the right side are, elevated. The ones to the left side below the green are, below the green there. So that looks like a tough hole in my opinion. Moving on to the fifth hole, it is a par 5. It measures 547 yards. This, Muirfield Village is definitely known for its par 5s. The 5th, the 11th, the 15th hole are all really outstanding holes. We'll get to those here in a second. But the 5th hole uses Deer Creek as one of the defenses. It snakes through, like I said, this course quite a bit. The 5th hole begins with a tee shot from an elevated tee box, which again you're going to see quite a bit throughout the week. It runs up to the fairway that slopes from the right to the left. On your second shot, you have a choice of fairways to lay up to, actually, as you can kind of see in this picture. You have one to the left that's kind of hidden by the text, as well as the fairway to the right that's just split right down the middle with the creek. So again, par fives are really going to be important this week. Par five scoring is going to be crucial to contending. This hole sees birdies 40% of the time, which is the highest birdie rate on the course. You literally have to birdie this hole. Otherwise, you're likely giving up a stroke to the field. Yeah, Eagles, most Eagles as well. Actually, second most Eagles, 2.2%. Plays a third of a stroke under par. Yeah, again, these par fives, they're all the easiest holes on the course. Literally the four easiest on the course. So if you're even just scoring par on these holes, you're probably giving up a stroke, to the field, if not a bogey. Watching your guys score bogeys on these par fives is one of the worst feelings ever, especially at par 70 courses too, when they're one of the few scoring opportunities, right? Kind of like at Colonial. But I can't say it enough. Again, these par fives, you really need to look at par five scoring this week. That is where a lot of the damage is going to be done as far as birdies go. Moving on to hole 6. It is a par 4. It measures 455 yards. It is the 12th most difficult hole on the course. So it's probably about average. It plays just over par. We see bogeys at a 15% rate. We also see double bogeys at a 3.1% rate, and it's likely due to that creek that surrounds the green there. I would assume we see quite a few double bogeys this week, mainly due to the water defenses. You're just going to see a lot of penalty shots, and scrambling is going to be difficult too. I mean, you can see how long the rough is, even in those pictures there. These greens are relatively small, so even the best approach players are going to miss those greens, even with their best approach shots, right? There's a lot of slopes and undulations too, so it might not run off the green, a whole lot, kind of like it did at Southern Hills, but because of that long rough, right, it's going to catch it. But you got to have a strong short game to contend here. Hole 7. This is another par 5, another one of those holes that you've got to score a birdie on. We'll kind of fly through some of these now that we've talked about some of the main things, but this is one of the longer par 5s. Same thing though, sees birdies at 36% of the time. 17th or second easiest hole on the course, I should say it like that, right? Again, these par 5s, you got to be scoring birdies to contend here. Hole 8 is going to be another par 3. This one is 200 yards long. It is the 10th most difficult hole on the course. It sees birdies at a 16% rate, bogeys at an 18% rate, and double bogeys at a 1.9% rate. Again, was one of those holes that had quite a few renovations to it, especially to the greens there. Looks like those bunkers could definitely cause some havoc throughout the week. That's a very elevated green there. It doesn't look fun for a pretty bad golfer like myself. But these guys are pros. They're going to do fine, of course. So that's the 8th hole. Again, it is a 200-yard par 3. 9th hole, it is a 417-yard par 4. This one also is another, par is a pretty good score here. Sees birdies at a 17% rate, bogeys at a 16% rate. Most of the field's probably going to be shooting par here. Another one of those holes that you shoot par and you just kind of move on to the next one. The next one, however, is going to be one of the more difficult holes on the course. It is the 10th hole. It's a par 4. It measures 472 yards long. It doesn't look necessarily challenging off the tee, compared to some of those other tee shots that we've been looking at so far. But the deep bunkers that, surround the green really, force golfers to shoot high scores each round. This hole sees the least amount of birdies on the course at 10%, as well as the most bogeys on the course at 25%. Again, it doesn't look extremely challenging off the tee, but those bunkers are so deep and they're just strategically placed right where golfers are likely going to be hitting it. We have 5 pin positions that the PGA Tour can use, as it says there, which really allows the PGA Tour pros there to have some fun throughout the week. It also gives them a lot of options too, right? So I think that's one of the things that they did with those greens. Moving on to the 11th hole. It is another par 5. Keep this pretty short. You're probably gonna need to score birdie on it, right? That is correct. You need to or sorry, golfers score birdie 30% of the time on this hole. It is played 0.12 strokes under par. Don't see a lot of bogeys on it 13% of the time, which is one of the lowest out of all the holes here. So, same thing. This is one of the holes you're gonna have to focus. I mean, you got to score on this hole. That's all I can really say. You do see a creek that runs through the right side of it there, up to the green, but I don't think it's going to be necessarily too challenging for players. We do see bogeys, 3% of the time, or double bogeys 3.2% of the time. So I'm assuming a lot of those come from if you hit it in the water there. Next, we have the 12th hole. This is a difficult hole on the course. It is another par 3. So if you're kind of getting the gist here, the par 3s are going to be some of the most difficult. The par 5s are going to be some of the easiest. So you want par 5 scoring, but you also want guys that can survive on these par 3s too. So might not be a bad idea to mix in both par 3 and par 5s in your model this week. So this one is 180 yards long. So for the par 3s, we go 180, 200, 210, and then the final par 3 is 200 as well. So I guess you could probably look in that range of 200 to 225 likely, with this one, hole 12 actually being 180. So it is the shortest of the 4. It sees birdies at a 14% rate with bogeys at a 21% rate. So, yeah, you're definitely going to want to have par on this hole. You can just see that water is probably just very um, defeating, off the tee, right? You're going to see that and it's going to be in your head right away. So, the tee shot must cover that large lake. It also guards the right side of the green there as well. There's 2 bunkers there, which looked just absolutely brutal, especially if you're hitting in that back bunker and you have that water, on the opposite side of the green. I know that would trip me out. I would probably chunk it out of there, um, out of the bunker there. So I need to quit talking down on my golf game and just keep breaking out of the course. Hole 13, we have a par 4. It's 455 yards long. Pretty average as far as scoring goes. 14% of the time you will see a birdie. 17% of the time you'll see a bogey. It is played slightly above par. Also sees the occasional double bogey as well. The 14th hole is going to be another par 4. This is 360 yards long. So that is one of the shorter par 3s that we're going to see throughout the course here. It's one of the best short par 4s in the game of golf. Like it says there, you can see water that runs along the right side of the fairway. I think this is going to be another great risk reward hole. 360 is probably a little too long to drive. You never really know how it'll bounce, of course, but with that water on the right side there, I can't imagine too many guys are going to be, pulling driver off the tee there. As it says in the paragraph, you could likely see a long iron off the tee, with a 9-iron or a wedge into the green. So the penalties are obvious, like it says there. Bunkers to the left side, the water's on the right side. If you hit into the bunkers, you're likely going to be, looking at water on your next shot. So it's probably a little of a mind twist as well. So that is the 14th hole again, par 4, 360 yards. It is the 11th most difficult hole on the course, as memorialtournament.com says. However, Fantasy National also says 11th too. So the next 2 holes are relatively easy compared to the ones that we just were looking at. The 15th hole is gotta make sure we're on the right one here. Yep. So yeah, 15th. So the 14th hole actually is the 14th easiest hole. The 15th hole is the third I'm getting this mixed around. 14th is fifth easiest. 15th is the third easiest, excuse me. So those will be 2, birdie opportunities for the field. Looks like 11, 14, and 15 are 3 of the most birdieable holes on the course. So you'll want to be going through that stretch at least under par. 16, 17, 18 are going to be the most difficult. We'll get to those in a second. 15 is a par 5, again, 561 yards long. You're going to see birdies about 39% of the time, but we also see eagles at the highest clip out of all the holes here on hole 15. 561 yards is really not too difficult here, as you can see throughout the paragraph. The second shot from the fairway is pretty much the same, where you can see your your shot land. Sorry, I'm reading that wrong. You can see where your shot could land if you lay up, and then how you can play it into the green. So I'm kind of reading that word for word from the website, of course, but I don't think this is going to be too difficult. You're just going to, again, have to score birdie and move on. The most difficult par 3 at Muirfield is the 200-yard 16th hole, which is played .22 strokes above par. The green on this hole has changed. It was changed in 2020 to hold shots better, as Nicholas just kind of saw balls fall off the green, specifically on the left side there. So he tried to change that just so that it would hold balls a little bit better. He didn't want to make it easier, but he didn't want it to be unfair for the players, of course. So, if you're hitting a good golf shot, you still want that ball to hang on to the green there. So, again, the 16th hole, it is the most difficult par 3 here at the course. And again, you can kind of read this on the Memorial Tournament, but he just didn't really like how it was holding the golf balls. Changed the greens up a little bit. I'll have to look and see how it played last year, because that was the first year that it saw the renovations, of course. But yeah, it's going to be a difficult one here. Let's look at the stats here quick before moving on. We are again .22 strokes above par. Birdies only 11% of the time. Bogeys at 20% of the time. Going to be a pretty difficult hole. The par 4 17th hole is a 485-yard par 4. Once again, it sees birdies at 12% of the time, bogeys at 23% of the time. Going to be another one of those difficult holes. Again, these last 3 holes are the most, 3 of the 4 most difficult holes on the course. It's going to be a pretty challenging test to end, each round, especially in those final 2 days. We've seen a lot of carnage on Sunday. I would assume we might see it in those last 3 holes this week as well. And finally, hole 18. It is the most difficult hole on the golf course. Jack Nicklaus, he specifically, designed the course to have a difficult hole on the 18th here. It's par 4. The hole measures 480 yards long, and it is a strong dogleg right. The green is defended by a creek to the left and multiple bunkers surrounding the outside. The closing hole at Muirfield sees the most double bogeys on the course, and it will probably, again, see some carnage on that final day, because why wouldn't it? We've seen so much in the last couple of weeks. Why wouldn't we see it on one of these most difficult holes here? I really was taken back by this picture. I mean, it is a very challenging tee shot. I'm assuming this is the approach shot, I guess, but you got those bunkers all surrounding the green. You have that big tree that kind of sits, right in the view of your approach shot. So it'll be interesting to see how players, work around this hole. So yeah, that's the hole by hole breakdown here. If you have any questions, let me know, please. Again, you can find this on the memorialtournament.com. We are getting close to the end of the show here, so I'm going to break down a little bit of the tournament history, and then we'll just kind of go through some picks here really quick. So if you have any questions, again, throw it in the YouTube chat. Would love to answer them for you. So Memorial Tournament, again, one of my favorite tournaments. Last year was pretty crazy. Jon Rahm was dominating the field in the first 3 rounds. I think he was going into he was going to go into Sunday with a 6-shot lead, I believe. It might even be more than that, but all my memories of that was kind of clouded as soon as he was forced to withdraw due to having COVID-19. If you weren't playing DFS or weren't following last year, he was literally told that he had to withdraw after he finished the 18th hole on Saturday's round. So he played all 18 holes. He just finished up the last hole, and then, as he's walking off the hole, they tell him he has to withdraw, which, again, we can talk about that maybe on another episode, of course, but it was certainly a crazy sight. Probably one of the craziest things in PGA DFS, I would assume, that's happened in its short history. But it was just a crazy event overall. So Patrick Cantlay, Collin Morikawa actually, battled it out in the final round. Even though Jon Rahm probably would have walked away with that thing, he could have had a terrible 4th round and still probably won the event. So definitely sucks for him. I'm not really a big asterisks guy when it comes to giving asterisks on certain championships, right? But that is an asterisk tournament or asterisk win for Patrick Cantlay, unfortunately. So Rahm definitely should have won that, but that's the year that we were living in last year. So again, Cantlay edged out Collin Morikawa last year to win In a playoff, Morikawa was unable to get up and down for par in the lone playoff hole, giving Patrick Cantlay his second win of that season last year. The last 5 winners of this tournament are Patrick Cantlay last year minus 13. He was 20-1 heading into the event. 2020 was Jon Rahm at minus 9. He was 20-1 heading into the event. 2019, Patrick Cantlay also won. He was 19 under par. He was 14-1 heading into the event. Bryson DeChambeau won in 2018 at 15 under par. He was 40-1. And Jason Duffner, he won at 13 under par, and he was 60-1 going into the event. So pretty, 61, I guess, for Duffner is, not the lowest odds, right? But 20-1, 20-1, 14-1, 40-1, even for Bryson. I mean, Bryson's clearly, a top talent. I don't think we thought of him like that back in 2018, right? But, clearly he's a top golfer, right? So, pretty short odds for the last 4 winners, at least. Duffner was 60-1. There were 2 long shots that came in 2015 and 2016. David Lingmerth and McGirt was the other winner there. So we can see some long shots, but with such a loaded field, with a difficult golf course like this, I would assume we'll see someone in that 50-1 or better range. Yeah, who knows though, right? Who knows? There's a lot of good golfers, especially young golfers right now, that are a little bit higher than that. We'll talk about them here in a second. So, as far as strokes gained went overall, I said it earlier, you really have to have your overall game here at Muirfield Village to contend. All 5 winners were positive in all 3 major stat categories, tee to green. Duffner lost strokes putting in 2017, so maybe you don't have to be the greatest putter to win this event, but as long as you are really stroking it with your irons, he gained 10 strokes on approach. Everyone else gained at least 3 or more. DeChambeau had 3.7, but he gained 5 strokes putting. Cantlay gained 7.4 in 2019, 6.1 in 2021. Rahm gained 5 strokes on approach in 2020, but he was absolutely dominant around the green. If you look up his shot on hole 16 in 2020, he had a really awesome chip on the 16th hole that he eventually actually got a penalty for because he moved his ball a little bit. But that was my main memory. Is I just watched that shot and I was like, wow, he's on his game right now, and he continued to play well. I mean, ever since then, really, that was his first win of that season. I think it was his first win in quite a while, but yeah, he turned it on after that quite a bit. But yeah, we've seen quality golfers at the top of this leaderboard though. Duffner had the highest odds of winning heading into the event of the last 5 winners at least. But again, loaded field, difficult golf course. I would assume we see a quality golfer at 40 to 50 or 1 or better or lower. I mean, win the event, but that's easy to say, right? As far as the field goes, 13 of the top 15 in the official world golf rankings will tee it up at Muirfield Village. Justin Thomas and Dustin Johnson are 2 of the 15 that are saving it for next week at the Canadian Open. So otherwise, we'll see 13 of the top 15. Pretty loaded event. The favorites so far to win in 2022, are Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Patrick Cantlay, Collin Morikawa, Cameron Smith, Jordan Spieth, and Xander Schauffele. All of those golfers come in at 22-1 or lower, depending on where you look, of course. We'll get into some course history really quick. You can find all this stuff on Fantasy Points in my article, my course and event preview. It'll break all this stuff down a little bit more. I do want to talk about course history, though, because it is pretty relevant at Muirfield Village throughout its history. I know we had the renovation in 2020, but as far as last year goes, I mean, Patrick Cantlay won again, Collin Morikawa won again. Those are 2 guys that played really well at Muirfield Village. The years before, Jon Rahm won in 2020. He was going to win in 2021, so it can't be that different. I know they're still great golfers, right? They're going to play well anywhere, but I really think course history is something that we can look at this week. I love breaking down course history. It's one of my favorite things that I do in my event and course preview, so be sure to look at that each week. It's something that I definitely spend a lot of time on when building out my article. Jon Rahm's definitely one of the top options here for course history. He's made 3 out of 4 cuts. He's won. He should have 2 wins, right? But he's got the 1 win. Patrick Cantlay's never missed a cut here. He's 6 for 6. He's got 2 wins, a 4th, and a 7th. Colin Morikawa is 3 for 3 in made cuts. He has a 1st and a 2nd as his 2 best finishes here. I'm also adding the Workday Charity Open that was held in 2020. Long story short, again, they had the Workday Charity Open held at Muirfield Village the week before the Memorial Tournament in 2020 due to the COVID, shutdown, right? So that was really unique that we see golfers shoot or play the same golf course back-to-back weeks. However, they did change it quite a bit. They made it much tougher for the Memorial, and we saw some different results there too. Other course history options to consider. Again, you can find all of these on Fantasy Points in my article. Just some other ones I want to talk about. Xander Schauffele is really solid. 4 out of 5 made cuts. He has a 14th or better in the last 4 starts that he's made here. Patrick Reed is 7 for 7 in made cuts. Adam Scott is 11 for 12. Ricky Fowler is 9 for 13. Siwoo Kim, 6 for 7. Matt Kuchar is 13 for 14 in made cuts. His best finish is a win, 2nd, 4th, and 5th. Obviously, those came in his prime, but he's been playing really well recently. Kevin Streelman has 8 made cuts in a row at Muirfield Village. He's actually making his 400th career PGA Tour start this week. Stuart Sink has made 16 out of 17 made cuts. His best finishes are a 5th, 8th, and an 8th. Danny Willett is 3 out of 3 in made cuts here. His best finishes are all T32 or better, and he comes in at $6,200 on DraftKings. Gonna have to, keep that one a little secret potentially. 3 out of 3 made cuts. He had a really solid finish at the Masters this year. I don't mind me some Danny Willett this week, excuse me. CT Pan made 4 out of 4 cuts. His best finish, though, is a T40. So I'm probably not going too much for the Panama this week, but we'll see. As far as ownership goes, let me refresh this really quick, give you the top 5 highest owned on Fantasy National here before we move on to picks. Right now we have Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Brian Harman. This is the wrong contest. Sorry. Yeah, don't want to play any more Brian Harman this week after he was the chalk bust of last week. Sorry about that. We have Shane Lowry, Xander Schauffele, Mito Pereira, Cameron Young, Rory McIlroy, and then Jordan Spieth comes in at 6th there. Those are the highest owned golfers as of now. That can always change, of course, by Wednesday. Last year we had Tony Finau as the highest owned golfer. He came in he finished in the tie for 32nd. Pretty rough results from the chalk of last year, to be honest. You can see more of that in my event and course preview. You can also see the key stats that I'm looking for as well in my event and course preview. I do think approach is going to be really important this week, greens and regulation as well, around the green and scrambling as well too because of that, thick rough. The greens are really small too, so we're probably going to see some runoff there, but you got to be able to chip. I think it's going to be shorter chips. You're not going to see balls really run off the green a whole lot due to the long rough, but you got to be a decent scrambler, especially in long rough. Those are some of the main ones. Again, you can find some of the key stats I like in my event and course preview. You can also view Pat James' stat model breakdown. If you are a Fantasy Points subscriber, again, use code VANESS22 to get a nice little discount off that. Some essential questions that I wrote up. I think the main one you have to consider this week is what are you going to do with Jon Rahm? He's likely going to be pretty highly owned in DFS. Let's look at him right now, actually, because when I looked earlier, it wasn't terrible. 15%. I'll have to, this is only one source, of course. I look at a couple, mainly being Fantasy Points, right? They have the best ownership projections, but this is one I'm looking at pretty early in the week here on Monday. Rahm is projected at 15%. I would assume that would go up throughout the week, but there's just a lot of good options. I don't know. He had that pretty shaky performance at the PGA Championship, but I'm telling you guys now, I am forgetting about that 100% for most golfers. If you had a rough performance at the PGA Championship, I'm not really taking that into account too much this week. The greens were so difficult. The course was very difficult. Obviously, guys played well there, but I'm not really, discounting guys a whole lot for a bad performance at a very tough golf course at Southern Hills. So same thing for Jon Rahm. I'm not going to discredit him for that. He won at the Mexico Open. He should have 2 wins in a row here at Muirfield Village. I don't see why there's any reason not to lock and load him, especially in DFS. 10-1 on or in your outright card, you have to really be confident that he's going to win there, right? Because you're probably not making any other bets with his 10-1 odds there. But yeah, that's where I stand on Rom. I'm probably going to be playing him quite a bit in DFS, not going to get there in the outright market. So some other betting targets that I like this week, and then we will wrap things up. Again, if you have any questions, throw them in the YouTube chat before we get out of here. First guy I like is Shane Lowry. He talked about in the article, he fits all three sides of that DFS math equation that we like to look for in PGA DFS. First off, course history. He was nearly perfect in all aspects of his game last year. He finished in a tie for sixth. He's been playing really well as well. He's fits the current form part of the math equation. He hasn't missed a cut since November, and he's gained strokes on approach in all but one start since then. Again, approach is going to be important this week. He has 8 top 20s this year, including 3 top 5 finishes, and he ranks inside the top 10 in strokes gained approach, strokes gained par 5s, scrambling, and greens in regulation gain, which fits the third part of the math equation, the stat fits. So Lowry hits all 3 parts of those: course history, current form, and stat fit. I really like Lowry this week. I think he's only $9,000 in DraftKings. It makes sense why he is going to be a popular option, of course, but when you see guys that fit all 3 sides of this, PGA DFS math equation, right? I think you really have to lock in on those guys. It's rare that you see someone that's, good course history, good current form too, right? A lot of the times you'll see older golfers that have awesome, course history, right? Kind of like a Stuart Sink this week, likely, but they haven't been playing, their best golf. Unlike Lowry, he's been killing it recently, and he's due for a win. He's got multiple top 5 finishes. He played really well in that Florida swing. He played well at Augusta too. Again, I'm not discrediting him for how he played at the PGA Championship. I don't really worry about that too much. And he fits the stats that I'm looking at. Strokes gained, par 5s, scrambling, greens and regulation. He's a great iron player as well. This former Open champion is due for a win, and I don't see why it can't come at Muirfield. Matt Fitzpatrick is another golfer who's been playing really consistent recently. He's made 11 out of 13 cuts. He has 6 top 10 finishes on the year, which is really solid for him. But 6 top 10 finishes is good for anybody, right? He's a much better golfer with his irons this year. If you look at his career summary, he was dead even with his approach last year. This year he's positive. I think he's gained on average 0.4 strokes on approach, which is solid for him each round. He's improved that aspect of it. He ranks inside the top 35 in every major stat category that I looked at in my model, and the main 6 that I looked at in my event and course preview article. He's really great in scrambling. He leads the field in scrambling. He doesn't have a PGA Tour win, right? So am I telling you to go place outrights on him? Not necessarily. I just think like a top 10 bet seems like a really, really great money at this point, a really great bet in my opinion. Yes, I think outright bets are the coolest thing in the world, right? Being able to post an outright ticket on Twitter is one of the most, fun things that you can do right in this game. But a lot of the times I used to catch myself not betting these guys that don't win at all, and then they ended up just wrecking me in DFS, for example, or I'm just not taking these opportunities of the placement value that they're bringing, such as Matt Fitzpatrick top 10, for example, or the 2 guys that I'll get to next. I do think a placement, top 5, top 10 on Fitzpatrick. He's been playing so well. Yes, I can easily see him already on Sunday crumbling down the leaderboard after holding up, 54 hole lead, or maybe he's, leading heading into the back 9, right, and then just kind of crumbles. But that's why these placement bets are obviously not as cool, right? But they're a little safer, of course. So, and the last 2 that I'm going to talk about, and I paired them together in my article just because they are both in bet now, or bet until they win, or bet until they show otherwise for me. Cameron Young and Davis Riley. I put the poll on Twitter up about these 2. Do you think Cameron Young and Davis Riley, would you rather pick those 2 or Will Zalatoris and Mito Pereira, when comparing them long term, who do you think is going to have the most PGA Tour wins as a duo? And to be honest, I thought many people would say Zalatoris and Pereira. They're probably the popular duo, compared to these two, just because they've been around on tour a little bit longer. Mito actually is a rookie, even though to me he seems like he's been on tour for a year now. He kind of came in halfway through the season last year and played really well, as we all remember. But um, I would have fully expected one of those two to have a win by now, Zalatoris and Mito, specifically Zalatoris. But man, it's hard to bet against these two, at least right now. They are playing great golf, and it's consistent golf too. I think the thing with Zalatoris, he'd have like 2 or 3 great tournaments last year, and then he'd have that one where he's 20% owned and just falls on his face, likely in a birdie fest, of course, right? But that's why I kind of side with these two. They've been playing well on every golf course, on every type of event. Um, Davis Riley played well at the Mexico Open. Cameron Young played well at the Genesis. Those were both, major birdie fests. Cameron Young, literally was neck and neck with Joaquin Niemann for most of the tournament. He would have won it if Niemann wasn't absolutely lights out, in all stat categories, right? So, and they played well on tough, golf courses as well. Cameron Young missed the cut at the Masters, but he played damn well at the PGA Championship. Davis Riley finished T13 at the PGA Championship. He also had a top 10 finish at the Wells Fargo. I think he did. I know Cameron Young did as well too. So what I'm trying to say here is they've been playing well on a variety of golf courses. They've been playing great on difficult golf courses. They've been playing great in birdie fests. They proved me wrong is what I'm really trying to say. I didn't think they'd be contending on these difficult courses that we see week in and week out. And again, they've been playing consistently. I think these are two guys that you gotta take advantage of, while they're playing well. Maybe they fizzle out a little bit and this is, one of their peaks, right? It could be. I could be wrong on that, but they also could be, finishing top 10 multiple times here for the rest of the PGA Tour season at decent odds too, because they're rookies, right? We don't expect this out of them week in and week out. Even with, multiple top 10s in a row from Davis Riley, or I think he's got 4 top 15s in a row now, 4 or 5, if you count the Zurich. And his odds are still, reasonable, right? I don't expect him maybe to win this weekend, but a top 10 bet, at the odds that he's getting right now, I think that's pretty solid, him and Cameron Young. So, as far as DFS goes, I would assume both of them are pretty, highly owned. Cameron Young has a little bit of a ownership bump to him right now over Riley. But man, they've been playing so well. Top 2 rookies on tour, in my opinion. Mito's right there, in third. When we're looking at rookie of the year standings, I think Cameron Young is near the top. I think he ranks highest in FedEx points compared to the other two. But gosh, they are playing well. And we can throw Mito in there too. I mean, he's clearly in this upper tier of younger talent. I think these 3, Mito, Cameron Young, Davis Riley, and then Will Zalatoris, not a rookie anymore, but he's still one of the younger golfers that we can kind of throw into this group here. So, yeah, love these two. I think you gotta, consider a placement bet on them if you're fading them entirely in other, whether it's DFS or if you're not putting it out right on them. I'm definitely be looking at top 10 bets for both of them. So that is my favorite golfers. I do want to talk about these guys quick. Some sneaky plays that I think that are going to go low owned, that are in that $6,000 to $7,000 range. Jason Day is an Ohio native. Well, he lives in Ohio now, actually. I don't think he's a native there, but he resides in Ohio. Been playing really decent golf recently as well. Let me pull up his data golf page here quickly, but he's gotten decent results at the Memorial too. He has a T4 and a T7 in the last 2 events here. Those were both the 2020 events that were held back-to-back weeks. Shake at the PGA Championship, T51 at the Byron Nelson. Not great the last 2 events, but again, I'm willing to forgive any PGA Championship results. He had a T15 at the Wells Fargo, which also had really long rough. I think he plays better in this area of the country. Again, he lives in Ohio, so I'm kind of going off that a little bit too, but I think he's sub 10% owned in that 7K range right now. I do like Jason Day, which is pretty rare for me. I don't say I like Jason Day a whole lot, but um, yeah, I got to throw him out there today or this week. Alex Noren, I think, is going to be completely overlooked because of how bad he was at the PGA Championship. Again, I'm not holding that against anybody. He actually had a pretty decent round one and then just completely ejected himself on the second day. But he was playing so well heading into that event. I think people are going to forget him, and I would not be surprised if he does well here this week at Muirfield. Let me pull up his course history quick. He has a T13, T41, and a miscut in 3 events here. But heading into the PGA Championship, he had multiple top 30s, multiple top 20s. He had a T5 at the Honda Classic, T6 at the Phoenix Open. Only 2 missed cuts really since January. One of those is the Zurich, which doesn't really count, right? And the other one is the PGA Championship, which I'm not really looking at too much. So, yeah, Alex Noren, I think that's a pretty sneaky play. I think everyone's gonna just completely overlook him because of how bad he burned people, including myself. So, I'll be right there with you if you bite down on him again this week. Talked about Dylan Fratelli earlier. I think he's only $6,200. Again, 3 for 3 and made cuts here. And then Brendan Steele, not so sneaky now as he was earlier in the day. He's $6,600 on DraftKings, but let me just pull this up really quick. He ranked decently, in my model. Still tweaking that a little bit, but I think he was in the top 30 in quite a few stat categories. T9th at the PGA Championship, T4 at the Zurich. He's made his last 6 cuts. He has made his last 7 cuts at Muirfield Village with a T13 in 2020 being his best result here. So, Brendan Steele, $6,600 on DraftKings. I think his ownership's getting close to 10% now, so might be a stay away for me, but, another sneaky, cheaper play that we can consider. So that is what I got for you all tonight. If you have any questions, let me know, please. Happy Memorial Day to everybody out there. Thanks to our troops, of course. I said it at the beginning of the show. Make sure that you thank a troop if you haven't done so already. And thank you guys for watching. Again, I said it earlier, that's really what makes this enjoyable for me. Just reaching out to everybody and just talking about golf. It's fun. So I appreciate you all. Good luck this week. You can find me on Twitter at Huntman10. Be sure to join the Fantasy Points team. We have a lot of good stuff coming out, throughout the next, really throughout this summer. A couple more majors coming up, but I really think we're growing and, going the right way. So let me know if you have any questions. Of course, again, you can find me at Huntman10 on Twitter. And good luck this week, everybody. Have a great night.